Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1736 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Toronto's Waterfront BIA. Check out what's happening on Toronto's waterfront this summer. Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Get your butts to Christie Pitts this summer for the best baseball in the city, outside the dome. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut is Eric Koreen. Welcome, Eric.
How you doing, Mike?
You know, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. I feel like we took a few runs at this over the past several years, and here you are in the TMDS basement.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm your Moby Dick. Just now you can call it a career now that you've got Eric Koreen on your podcast. Big deal.
My name is Ishmael. All right, now...
I get that reference.
You know what? That tells me you're a literary guy. You're a well-read man.
I actually have not read Moby Dick, but I know the main character and the whale, so I can fake it. Thank you, Jeopardy.
I believe in, I can't tell, I think it was like a U of T English class where I actually did have to read Moby Dick. I think it was like U.S. literature or something, like the great American novels. And I remember having to read Moby Dick. So I don't remember much about it, but I know I read it and I wrote an essay on the topic.
I'm sure it was pristine, and you saw the whale for the allegory that it was.
Oh, it's full of allegories, right? It's full of allegories. Let me read to you, actually. I have it here. Let me read to you my essay on Moby Dick. Just kidding. Eric, but here you are, and I'm going to start like out of the hopper here. I'm going hot. You ready for this?
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to read, and this is a post from you, Eric Koreen, on Blue Sky. By the way, I said I was going to start with this, but I'm actually going to start with your social media behavior. I am curious, where do you post these days? We're talking in July 2025.
Blue Sky, almost exclusively. I've stopped posting on Twitter/X. I have a locked Instagram account that is mostly pictures of my pets. That's pretty much it.
When did you decide to stop posting on the app formerly known as Twitter?
I believe it was when Elon Musk did not make a Sieg Heil gesture, according to him. I think that was the final straw. I will say, in addition to politics, I think that site stopped being useful to me. First of all, I think we're finding, and people do deep dives on this, we have people at The Athletic who are paid to sort of analyze this stuff, but there is less traffic driven by social media posts, individual social media posts certainly. And then for X itself, it was just not getting me the posts I wanted to see. It was suppressing news, I think we can say fairly. And, you know, my friends who I just want to hear about how their stupid days are going, like I sort of enjoy that. I know people used to make fun of like, oh, what did you have for lunch? Who cares? But like, I sort of like that. Like,
sure.
That's
the social part.
Yeah. Social media. So I wasn't getting the news I wanted, and I wasn't getting the dumb information from my pals that I wanted. So what was I really getting from that? And I wasn't getting much of an audience, or it didn't feel like I was. So what was the point in addition to supporting somebody who I did not feel like supporting anymore?
So in you decided not to delete the account, but you sort of put up poster. I can't remember who was in the bio or whatever to say like it's a dormant account. I'm not actually posting here.
Yeah, there's still some utility there, and still some posters who I use for notifications. The Raptors media account just sort of telling us when practice is still via X. So it's mostly for practicality and utility, but I do not plan on posting from there in the near future, certainly.
So if you want to follow Eric, go to Blue Sky. That's where I am. I'm at torontomike.com. Eric is at ekoreen, so ekoreen.bsky.social. So I'm going to read something you posted in May. Too many people talk about how I invented the term hot take, and not enough people talk about how do you even acronymized? Say it for me, that word.
I jokingly say ICYMI or ICMI.
All right,
but it's an acronym. It's ICYMI in case you missed it. And I can't prove this, but it is an acronym you see a lot on the internet. Like
I use it all the time.
Yeah, because you gotta promote that work. Always be branding.
Right.
And so when you get into the second, third, maybe even the rare territory of the fourth repost, pure sociopathic behavior, you got to drop the ICYMI. And I feel strongly, again, with no proof, that I was the first person to use that horrible, horrible acronym.
Okay, so no proof on this. We'll get back. Obviously, we're going to get back to the hot take invention here. But the ICYMI, did you use it initially as a hashtag on Twitter, or just in case ICYMI?
I don't think it was a hashtag when I used it. I very rarely used hashtags. It was just, I like things that are obviously stupid, and ICYMI is a terrible acronym. Like the very fact that you cannot pronounce it and there's no reason for you to understand what it stands for, except that it's somehow become a part of our dumb lives. That really speaks to me on some existential level. So I think that's how I first used it. Yeah.
Well, see, I think back in the day, we're not going back that long ago, but back in the day, I think if you had that, you're talking about the second or third run at something. So you posted something on The Athletic, I don't know, something about the Raptors, and then you have that initial, hey, go check out my new thing, here's a link or whatever. But then you want to later, you want to catch the people who missed it the first time, or people who maybe they only check at a certain time of day or something, get it in their feeds, and you probably feel like, oh, this is too self-promoting to just you need to add something to give it a little bit of context that this is for you, a service to you in case you missed it.
Yeah, and if you've already seen it, I know you've seen it. I'm not trying to shove this down your throat. I got to make a living. I just want, I write things to be read. I want them to be as widely read as possible. Am I comfortable with self-promotion? No, I am not. And this is why I should never own my own business. But this is, part of the game, as they say. And that's how I'm going to play it. That's how I justified it to myself, at least. But
and again, you have no evidence of this, but you sincerely believe that you were the first to post in case you missed it as an ICYMI.
It's one of those, it's sort of like my first memory that I'm convinced is now my first memory, but I don't know whether I actually remember that or I've invented that is my first memory and can I actually picture it. Right. So I don't know whether it's something I earnestly believe or not anymore.
It's a copy of a copy of a copy.
But for the sake of this podcast, yes, I did.
Lean in, man.
I did create it.
Let somebody prove you wrong or whatever. That's part of the fun. But let's get back to this claim that I think you have more confidence in, which is that you, Eric Koreen, now an FOTM, that means friend of Toronto Mike, better late than never. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
You invented the term hot take. Please explain this for those who are kind of, there's a lot of people who can't believe what they just heard. You invented the term hot take.
Yeah, no, that's somebody else has done the research there.
Okay.
Do I remember the article? No. Do I remember where it was? No. But if you search Eric Koreen, History of the Hot Take, Politics, Sports. There is an article in one of those sort of, online magazine type places, like it might have been the New Republic. I'm not positive. And somebody was searching for sort of doing a story on the hot take because it had made its way into the sort of the realm of politics.
Right.
This must have been like 2013 or something like that, or 2014. And they noted how it had been used in sports and social media before. And the writer, she said that one of the first evident uses of the term hot take was from me. Wow. So that was on her research. I have, again, not done my journalistic duty and really tried to figure out how true that is. I suspect not very true. But again, for the sake of this podcast, yes, it is absolutely true. Right. And the hot take in question, by the way, was that Call Me Maybe by Carly Rae Jepsen was a banger. And I think that was still when anybody could deny that and get away with it. And it's so self-evident now, 12 years removed or whatever we are, that no longer a hot take. But when she still needed the stamp of Justin Bieber to get on the radio, I wasn't afraid to speak power to truth there.
Yeah, she was a Canadian Idol contestant, as I recall.
I think that's right. I didn't watch much Canadian Idol. Her second full album, Emotion, is genuinely an amazing pop album, and I recommend it to everybody. Once again, unironically, I've never used irony.
I want to shout out Josh Ramsey, who's an FOTM, who co-wrote Call Me Maybe. He's with Marianas Trench.
Oh, well, congratulations to him. Again, certified banger. Deserved all the airplay and more it has gotten in the years that have gone by.
And it's fair to say, time has been very kind to that hot take, where people are kind of laughing right now that was ever a hot take, but it was of the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean...
I have a hot take. The Beatles were a good band.
No,
that's my hot take.
I like that these are on equal planes, absolutely. But as they should be.
Why do you think it is Carly Rae Jepsen is considered by Americans... not Canadians, but by Americans to be a one-hit wonder? Didn't she have, this is my perspective from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, but she had the video with Tom Hanks. You know the song I'm talking about.
I don't.
Okay, I have to remind myself of this title, but it was super catchy, and once I know the title, I'll know the freaking tune. But I feel like in this country, at least, she's definitely had multiple hits, but the fact that she's known as a one-hit wonder in the USA. Any hot takes on that?
I don't have any other than... it's sort of a version of the Tragically Hip story that we all know. But like the pop version of that is that like she, Call Me Maybe for whatever reason, beyond its, again, self-evident greatness, broke through, and she had that connection to Bieber at the time. And, off the second album, she had a single called I
This
Really
is the song.
Like You.
So this is the Tom Hanks video, I Really Like You. This is the song I'm thinking about.
She has an even better song that leads off that album. I just turned 40. I can't actually... Run Away With Me. Like, that is maybe my favorite song of hers. And that whole album is great, and it probably was all over like CBC radio and a few of the pop stations, but they just didn't enter the zeitgeist, the worldwide zeitgeist, like Call Me Maybe did. So I think it was, Call Me Maybe was massive. It might have been the biggest song of that year, or top three, and nothing else has approached that. And she still remains sort of, intelligent pop catnip sort of thing, but that's not at all the level in which Call Me Maybe was on, which was something far beyond that, and so I'm sure there are similar examples, and it's hard to come to mind, of one-hit wonders where those artists have like sincere fans who are like, well, actually, the best album was his seventh album in which he only played mandolin, but that type of thing. But well, actually, Carly Rae Jepsen's second album is her best album.
Okay, that's a hot take right there. You mentioned pets. How many pets do you have?
I have 2. I have a dog named Walter. He's 10. He's great. I have a cat named Luna. She is also great.
When did you name the dog?
My wife and I did. He came with the name Bomber. When we adopted him, he was about 2. My wife did not like that. I was sort of more, it's his name, but like they had just given him the name at the shelter. And so he very much looks like an old man, and we thought he needed an old man name. Yeah, well. And there was a long list, but Walter stayed at the top of it.
Because I've noticed a trend over the past 15 years or so where we're giving our pets like people names. Like this seems to be a more recent, instead of like Spot or Rover, it's like Walter or Stan.
Yeah, I mean, my wife had a cat when she met me, or soon after she met me, I should say, named Nico. Those are my first real pets of my life. I was not a pet owner. When I think back to like my friends' dogs, a lot of them were like, Candy or Ginger. Right. So, but this is, a sample size of one person's life. I can't speak to the trends, the larger trends at play here.
Well, I'm here to observe these larger trends at play. Now, you're at the Athletic now. I wonder if maybe we can go back a little bit. Maybe just before we do that, because I know you were a super early hire by the Athletic. I saw you in a hat. You took it off to put on the headphones, but it was a Left Field Brewery hat. A lot of people think that L is like, I'm a big fan of Laverne and Shirley, right? That's kind of like the Laverne stylized L. But are you a fan of Left Field Brewery? When
I wear an L, I just assume people think I'm a loser, which, not inaccurate. There's that song with an L on your forehead. This is actually All-Star by Smash Mouth.
Right.
I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I've heard that song for now, however long I've been doing this job. Around All-Star time, you hear it because the Raptors are trying to promote their All-Star candidates, and so it gets played at like the 10 home games before All-Star ballots are due.
Right.
I really hate that song. And I guess another generation is just like, oh, it's the Shrek song.
I think I do believe it was in a movie before Shrek. Like, you're right, it is known as the Shrek song, and my kids would know it's the Shrek song. But there was a movie with like bad superheroes. I have to Google this name too, but I feel like Ben Stiller might have been in it.
I can't back you up on this. I'll take your word for it. As
Google
we've learned here,
I
don't do research. That's the takeaway of this podcast. Left Field Brewery is about 15, 20 minutes from where I live. It's a great space. They make great beer. I will complain that they've gone away from the sort of shorter cans to the tall cans. I think that's for getting in the LCBO reasons for the most part. And I get it. Like, I'm not blaming them for it. But personally, I like a 355 milliliter can of beer versus a 500 milliliter can of beer.
Like 473.
And I don't, like, I'm not going to obviously turn one down if 1 or 4 were to be offered to me.
Wow.
But I just think there is, I can't drink as much beer as I used to be able to. I don't want to drink as much beer as I used to be able to, and let's be clear, I was never that great at drinking beer. It just fills you up now. Like that's my issue. So I love Left Field Brewery. I really like their beers. I wish they still had more 355 milliliter cans.
Okay, duly noted. Now, a couple of points on Left Field. One is they brew a Leafs lager for the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, which you can buy at Christie Pitts if you go to Christie Pitts to take in some Leafs baseball, which is very entertaining and costs you absolutely nothing, Eric. Like, there's no ticket required.
For a long time, I wrote a story for the program, the annual program at Toronto Maple Leafs games, back when Jack Domenico, I think he's passed.
He's passed away, yeah.
And I think I can say this fairly. He was the last person who was still accepting stories via fax machine. That I've maybe the only person I've ever faxed a story to, like only employer, whatever word you want to use. But yes, I had to fax my stories to him. Yeah.
Now, Jack, I've heard a couple of funny things about Jack. One is a story I was told earlier this year on Toronto Mike by Rob Butler, who manages the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team. And when he played for the Leafs baseball team, he says Jack had a rule where no one's allowed to hit 500. And he would literally take away hits to ensure you stayed under the 500. And it's like, what's the opposite of a Mendoza line? I don't even know what you call that. But so he says one stretch, this is according to Rob Butler on Toronto Mike, he says he went 12 for 13 and his average went down. So this is a fun little Jack.
To what end?
I think Jack felt it made the league look too amateur hour when somebody can bat 500.
Yeah, I get that. I'd be pissed about it, but
because I think that season Rob Butler ended up at 493 or something like that. But all these numbers and all these fun facts, well, that particular fun fact won't be in here, but that he was taking away hits. But I'm giving you a book, Eric, on the history of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball.
All right.
So next time you need to fax in a story, you can reference it in that book of history. By the way, the other interesting fact is back in the day when Jack owned the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team and his family sold it and there's new ownership now. But I know he used to pass around a jar or something would be passed around the hill at Christie Pitts for people to donate money. Like there's no ticket required, but he used to ask for donations or whatever to keep things going. So I'm happy to report the new ownership doesn't actually do that. So you can actually watch the game and no jar will come across your lap or whatever.
Yeah, just all your favorite journalists do it via their newsletters.
Do you have a Substack?
I do not, no.
But you're on The Athletic.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're asking for money too. Anyway, we don't have to go into the history of journalism about why that is necessary.
It might come up organically here, but because you mentioned left field, though, it sounds like left field is the beer of choice around here. But Eric, you are on Great Lakes Brewery territory here. So you said if somebody gifted you some tall cans, you wouldn't say no.
Hypothetically, yeah.
I'm about to do that, Eric. You're getting, there's some fresh craft beer in front of you, courtesy of Great Lakes Brewery, and that's brewed right here in Southern Etobicoke. And I think the left field guys and the GLB guys are friendly, so I don't think GLB will be upset at all the left field love here. But for my taste buds, I'm a Great Lakes man.
I've had some of their products before. I enjoy them, and I look forward to enjoying these.
Okay, let me know what you think. And since you're here, and then we're going to get into, I want to talk about The Athletic, and beforehand,
you want to talk about what I've done or haven't done with my career?
Well,
getting 20 minutes of organic ad plugs into the start so everybody can really lounge.
2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
2.5 minutes. Palma Pasta did send over a large lasagna for you. It's in my freezer right now. It pairs nicely with the Great Lakes. So I'm feeding you. You've got some reading material, and I'm giving you some fresh craft beer. It was worth the trip, Eric.
Yeah, I think this does not violate the New York Times accepting gifts policy. I think if they don't tell
is there a dollar value
don't tell
that you know
anybody.
I'm not. They're not listening.
If I knew, I would not speak of it, and I do not know exactly what it is. I will check the policy to make sure before I take these.
I can tell you, I've had a CBC journalist on the program who refused the gifts for that very reason.
It's not insane. I get it. I'd like to think I am able to walk that line comfortably, but I get why some employers would not necessarily, why they would want to draw a hard line.
Yeah, because you might, you mainly focus on the Raptors and the NBA, but there might be a piece coming up on the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, and they're going to connect these dots.
Yeah, exactly.
You can talk about Sato, the woman pitcher they have going on there. All right, so your athletic bio. I'm going to read your athletic bio, and then we're going to get into it, Eric. It says, Eric Koreen is a senior. That's good to get that word in there. A senior writer covering the Raptors and the NBA. Previously, he has written for the National Post, Canada Press, Sportsnet, and Complex. You, Eric, were a very, very early hire by The Athletic. Do you think you could, before we get you to the New York Times here, do you want to go back? I'll read a description of an episode I recorded with James Myrtle in October 2016. And he came by, and I don't know if we recorded in October 2016, but that is the month, I suppose, that the Athletic expanded to a second city. The Athletic was in Chicago, and they decided to launch in Toronto to focus on Leafs, Raptors, and Blue Jays coverage. Again, this is October 2016. Myrtle was the editor-in-chief for Toronto. And maybe, how did you end up at the Athletic? Like, did Myrtle tap you on the shoulder? Did Sean Fitzgerald play a role? I got to know the story, Eric.
So none of those guys did. I outdate Sean, who I worked with at the Post and the Athletic, joined after. Myrtle actually joined after. I am the only, and I want this clear, because everybody's trying to claim this for themselves. I am the only day one Toronto, after Caitlin McGrath left for Tennis Canada, I'm the only day one Toronto employee left. There are some Chicago Athletic employees who outdate me. But I think when we sort of soft launched, it was me, it was Caitlin, it was David Alter, and it was John Lott. I feel like I need to say the great John Lott, because he's like one of the best beat reporters of any beat I've ever seen. So what happened is I was laid off in January 2016. We don't have to go through all of it, but
this is the National Post.
Yeah, Post Media bought the Sun newspapers. They were like, no, we can run two separate newsrooms. And then eventually they're like, actually, we have this whole sports section at the Sun, and we have another smaller sports section at the Post. Don't think we need both. Let's get rid of one of them. So I was let go. I mean, they might have a different side of that story, but I think that's accurate.
I think that's fair.
So I did a bunch of that was the first year the Raptors made the conference final. So it ended up working out pretty well for me in terms of staying relevant. That's when I got a lot of those, secondary credits you were sort of reading for me, Complex, Sportsnet. Like there was just, I did a bunch of writing for the Canadian Press, where I actually started my career, if that's what we're calling it now. I guess I have to. And so I was able to withstand, it made me nervous. I'm anxious. Like I said, I don't want to run my own business. If I were a full-time freelancer, it would be very difficult for my brain. But that year provided a lot of opportunity. At the same time, the Athletic had started in Chicago. To be honest, I had not heard of it. I had been doing those sort of Hoop Talks series that Kevin Kennedy was running. It started with Pitch Talks. I think Pitch Talks was much more successful than Hoop Talks, but he knows the books, I don't. But I think he sort of got in touch, or the Athletic people, Adam Hansman and Alex Mather got in touch with him. They had some sort of connection, and they pointed their way, knowing they were looking to go to Toronto. And I think, not to speak for them, they were looking at Toronto because they, a diehard sort of fandom, teams on the upswing. That's when the Leafs got Austin Matthews. And, the Raptors were competing, and the Jays were coming off that magical 2015 year and going into their second straight playoff appearance. And I was sort of, somebody who had done it before, somebody who had a decent Twitter following, which was very big back then because they didn't have a natural way of, getting their name out there. So if I'm doing the work, the sort of the publicity, that goes a long way to a startup. We talked. Adam and I had our first meeting at the Salad King, and across from what's now Toronto Metropolitan University on the Thai restaurant on Yonge Street. We eventually agreed. I think somebody who knew the job, knew the people involved, could, get access, who the Raptors would trust to give access to, and not, have to sort of explain on and on what the Athletic was and go through that whole process was important for them. And that's sort of how it happened. And so that was, I think, October 11th, October 13th. That was sort of the first day. So I'm coming up on 9 years this October. Yeah.
Now, there's a newsletter I was subscribed to called 1236. Have you heard of this newsletter? Okay. So Mark Weisblot, who I believe is on the live stream right now. So hello to FOTM Hall of Famer Mark Weisblot. Please bring back the 1236 newsletter because I personally miss it. It would appear in my inbox every day at 1236, appropriately enough. And I saw this in October 2016. He wrote, "Sports writer startup rolls the dice on Toronto. The Athletic, a paywalled site that launched in Chicago in January and the Bay Area in April." Oh, that's interesting. We were the third?
No, I don't think...
He's got this wrong?
I think there was one freelance writer or one writer writing about the Warriors.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that. So it was not a full... Like, Chicago was a full market, and the Bay Area was like a team or
it's like an outlier. Yeah, okay.
But I think, yes, he's technically correct, but spiritually the Bay Area really bloomed after that.
I think that describes Weisblot perfectly.
Technically correct. Yeah.
But spiritually.
The best kind of correct, technically correct, yeah.
Okay, so Bay Area in April has now debuted its Canadian version featuring laid-off National Post writers David Alter, who, by the way, I just want to say I love David Alter. I love this guy. So if he's listening, I want to say hi to David. No longer with the Athletic, but David Alter, Eric Koreen, that's you, buddy, and John Lott. So all three of you, day oneers, were from the National Post, part of that wave of layoffs they did.
Yeah. So thanks to Paul Godfrey for giving the Athletic its Toronto staff to start out.
Speaking of Paul Godfrey, I believe his son Rob is a co-owner of the aforementioned Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team.
All right. Well,
so it's just a small world we live in.
Hi, Rob.
At the time, the $49.99 annual subscription promises no ads, no clickbait, no fluff. So I think it's an important distinction because I just checked my notes. It was January 2017 when James Myrtle and Sean Fitzgerald came over to this basement here to talk about their new roles at the Athletic.
I want to say they started in November. And my timeline could be off. I'm claiming to be the only original left standing. And again, a very technically correct, spiritually incorrect, but again, true. Yeah, like
I would say that's spiritually correct as well. Like to me, these definitive records are important. Like you are the last person standing who was a day one hire.
Yeah, no,
for
I
Athletic
think Myrtle wouldn't join unless I started and paved the way for him. So we can say that. Eat it, Myrtle.
He had to watch his head down here. He's a tall guy.
Yeah, no, he would drill his noggin on this. But like I was saying, I too have a basement that is not conducive to, I don't know. If you
it's for hobbits, is what you're telling me.
If you were 5'10", I think in my basement you would hit your head, and I'm taller than 5'10".
I'm going to tell you now, 5'8" people hit their head in this basement.
All right.
So I beat you on that one. But I do feel like back in the day, I don't think they ever saw this future where people might actually go to the basement for anything other than to, I don't know, get the furnace going or something like that. Like, what are you doing in the basement down there? It's like, nah, I record down here. You didn't see that coming? Come on, buddy. All right, so tell me a little bit before we get you, before it's sold. The Athletic, of course, sold to the New York Times company. Before that, and that's 2022, like, what was it like working for the Athletic? It's kind of like working for a startup. Like, I'm just curious, like, there's no office, right? You're all working.
It was very, very writer driven, very, you can do whatever, I don't want to paint it like it was the halcyon days because like you want some direction sometimes, but especially at the very beginning, they didn't have that infrastructure. They were just hiring writers again to do what they can do and try to draw readers that way. And as it grew, it became a bit more organized. You had James as the Toronto and eventually the Canada editor. You had editors you worked more closely with. I worked with Mike Cormack while he was at the Athletic. He sort of came in for that. But it was very, it's not like I was having long conversations with editors every day. It's like, how do I think I can best cover this team? And, Blake Murphy was there as a freelancer. He was a day one free contributor to start and eventually became full-time and back then when he became full-time, I, as a joke that I think nobody but Blake, myself and our 9 podcast listeners understood, I put in my bio that I was the lead Raptors writer to make sure that everybody knew that Blake was, was second on the chain of command.
Am I right in remembering that Blake Murphy was a big-time Carly Rae Jepsen fan himself?
Yes. We actually went to the same show at Roy Thompson Hall where she played with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra.
Beck just did that.
It's if you can see an artist play with a world-class orchestra, I say you do it.
I think Beck cracked the joke about how with him in the orchestra, they were almost as big as Broken Social Scene, like in terms of number of people. Yeah.
Hey-o. There's a joke for people exactly my age. So, yeah, I think the thing about those startups is missions change pretty quickly, and it went from becoming, known any way possible and, what they viewed as important, from cadence to, length to the types of stories that were being written. That sort of changed quickly as they were reacting to see what was working and what wasn't. So I wouldn't say it was like a terribly stable period, but it was also in terms of like just pure creative freedom. That's probably the most I've had in my career. I don't say that as a positive or a negative. Like I probably crave a bit more structure than I had in those first few years. Blake coming on and like unintentionally gave me structure because there were just pieces that I knew were more up my alley. There were pieces that I knew were more up his alley. There were things we could collaborate on, and that gave me a bit more just, peace of mind in terms of what I was working towards. So that really helped me, and it's probably the most fun I've had on this beat has been working with him, certainly. And yeah, so I'm not going to take you through every single change in, what we were going toward, what we were trying to do. But, you could get whiplash at times trying to react to what the company was viewing as important. And I haven't worked at other startups, but I imagine that's not uncommon. It's, I think they went in, I think if you asked Alex and Adam, they would say they really thought they would be at first, before like Chicago even, it's like they were going to be this analytics heavy website that was going to cover sports in a way that more traditional outlets weren't doing it, leaning on all this stuff that was really at the center of a lot of sports internet writing at the time. And what they found is that, that stuff does well, but the longer features about humans we really care about, also like they have been staples for a good reason for a long time. And, the columns, the opinion pieces, if you got a hot button topic, those also do well. And then as it went on, it's like, oh, we need to be able to react to news better. Whereas we didn't used to chase every single thing. We still don't chase every single thing, but there is something about getting something out. If somebody signs a huge deal, people want to read something about it right away, and then they'll give it some time to, for us to get our heads around the whole situation and come back with a fuller picture later. But, the first thing somebody does when they hear, Brandon Ingram, the Raptors traded, is they'll Google Brandon Ingram trade, and they want to see something then. And so there needed to be an apparatus for that. Anyway, that's just, some of the ways that things have changed from the very start to, where we are now.
So 2016, when you joined The Athletic, did you ever for even a moment envision that, hey, I'll still be at this website in 10 years? Because I don't want to jinx it, but you're going to likely make 10 years.
We'll see. Knock on wood. This is the industry I have chosen.
Sure. Well, if you don't make 10 years, you can blame me.
Sure. I do like having people to blame. If not you, it will be my parents' fault. They did not encourage me to do this. All my dad said growing up was, he said two things. He said, don't be a lawyer. He was a lawyer. And be a teacher, because they got the summers off. So 1 for 2. Hi, Dad. That thought didn't occur to me because I think I was still in like emotional whiplash from having been laid off. That was my first time. Like,
how long were you at the National Post when you got that?
I started part-time in 2006 and had been full-time since 2008. And like, that stuff, like all I've done my whole career is hear stories about people getting laid off. Like obviously I'm exaggerating, but it's been a constant. And you intellectually know that time is coming for you, but you never, I didn't expect it. And so when, I did as much soul searching as I could. I considered other careers in between the two jobs, and this was just the best opportunity that arose for me. So in no way was I thinking what's going to be the case in 10 years or 9 years. I was thinking, oh, they're offering me a fair wage to do something I know I can do, and let's see how it goes. That was my thought process at the time.
All right, let's fast forward to 2022 here. And the news item, I'll just read it. I think I can't remember what source I pulled it from, but I believe it's all accurate, that the New York Times Company acquired The Athletic for $550 million US. This is 2022. Initially as a semi-independent entity under the continued direction of Alex and Adam, the founders you mentioned earlier. In July 2023, the company dissolved the New York Times' existing sports department. Sound familiar to you? Laid off or reassigned its sports staff and began operating The Athletic as a replacement sports department under new management. So I am curious what it was like on the inside when all of this went down. But I'm also naturally curious if, as a day oneer for Athletic Toronto, did you have some kind of deal, some kind of shares where you got a slice of this $550 million pie?
I'm not going to get into specifics.
Show me your financial papers.
Other than to say I did get an extra benefit, yes, at the time that the sale went through. And it was, certain people had more, a lot of people had less. I'm not in a position to complain about it. So that was a positive.
Okay, well, already, I don't know numbers, and all I know is what you just told me, but good for you. I'm glad that...
I'd like to say I did it like with purpose and intelligently. I didn't. It's just a thing that happened upon me, basically. Wow. Just like life. Life just happens to me, and I'm just trying to react the best I can. It's like, how do you make it in journalism? I don't know. Try control what you can control and hope you get lucky.
Keep writing. Yeah.
What was your question?
Yeah, so what was it like inside when this is going down? And then how are things different now?
Yeah.
The New York Times.
So I think we knew, the pandemic comes and we reach a natural point of, I don't want to say we'd stop growing, but the pandemic certainly changed a lot of financial realities, let go of some people in markets that weren't working, that sucked. There was a time where, nobody knew what was going to happen, and it sort of made sense. And there were like a bunch of reports on people who report on this stuff that, The Athletic is talking, or these people are talking. I think Axios was one. There were forever rumors that one of the sports gambling sites was going to be interested in that. And so when it was the New York Times, you don't know how things are going to play out, but a company that invests in journalism and has managed to make a foothold in the journalism adjacent landscape digitally was, I think, one of the better potential outcomes if it was going to be sold. I think, again, not to give you a huge bullet by bullet point rundown, things have become even more structured. I think again, that's not something I dislike. I think, first of all, sometime in there before the sale, we went from being organized by location to organized by sport. So I was, NBA vertical as opposed to working for the Athletic Toronto or the Athletic Canada. That was a fundamental change because it sort of changed the people I was interacting with on Slack and what have you. Sure. But there's just, I think in general, the Times has encouraged us to reach for a broader audience when we're writing niche stories or more local stories, try to find ways to make them, have a bit more general appeal. Not every story can be about LeBron James, obviously. But I think that's, and just a lot, like I said, a lot more conversation with my editors on a, weekly basis about stories to attack, ideas flowing both ways instead of me just saying, here's what I'm writing tonight, here's what I'm working on. It's nice to get that feedback. It's nice to be able to workshop ideas. I do want to say when, the time, I think we were at Summer League one year, and that's when the news of the Times getting rid of its sports section came out. That sucked. If you are a working journalist in the year 2025, a lot of people who have, and I believe, thankfully, they were mostly reassigned. I'm not sure there were layoffs, but don't quote me on that. So that is great. But, we didn't, I don't want to speak for anybody else but myself. It's not like any sort of my goal was, maybe the New York Times will just use us for their sports section instead. Like that wasn't something I wanted. I just wanted to continue to do my work. So I think there was, from my end, and I think a lot of people I know, like a lot of empathy for the sports section at the Times, which was great and has had a lot of great writers through its history. Saying that, it is a kick to see my byline in a physical copy of the New York Times every so often. Didn't think that would happen in my life. So that is neat. And, in terms of their dealings with me personally, I've been treated well, is what I can say. And no matter who the owners have been at The Athletic, I feel like I've been treated fairly and, given a nice mix of freedom and feedback. And that's been great.
Like, how impacting is the analytics on the topic of the day? Like, so if you were to write it, I had a chat with Kevin McGran from the Toronto Star, who covers hockey, and he basically said to me, we're allowed to write about like these 5 people. Like, give me more Austin. This is before Mitch Marner was, traded to the Vegas. But give me more Mitch Marner. Give me more Austin Matthews. Give me more Nylander. Give me John Tavares. Like if you see a certain subject matter gets a whack more clicks, essentially, or eyeballs than this other subject, does that mean you're not going to be able to write about that less popular subject and you're going to keep going back to the well that delivers the eyeballs?
I think that's a fair statement. I don't think it means you can't devote time to the other subjects. You can't get into, as the kids say, you can't get into your bag and write, a story about, covering the pick and roll or this new way the Raptors are playing defense or, a feature on the 10th man. But the reliable things that are going to help create a foundation of an audience for you. So I think that's on your mind. I haven't received much. Why are you writing about that? Stop writing about that. I think, I don't think I've ever got that note. It's more, here's like a big picture idea that, might have a broader appeal. You should focus on that, a tad more than you are.
I have a couple of questions that came in from the listenership when they heard you were finally making your highly anticipated Toronto Mike debut. And it was highly anticipated by me, Eric, which is really all that matters around here. So I told you earlier that there's a lot of great summertime entertainment happening at Christie Pitts of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball game, but I'm sure you know about how amazing it is on Toronto's waterfront in the summertime, and all the great activities and festivals and just the cycling alone. And so much great stuff happening on the waterfront. And I'm here to tell you, Eric, Friday, August 8th to Sunday, August 10th, there is going to be a African culture celebration. It's called Habari Africa. It's an incredible cultural experience. It's free. It's a vibrant, multidisciplinary African arts festival. It's all ages event. There's a fantastic weekend of rich art, tastes, and sounds from the African continent. So don't miss out on this unique festival celebrating the wealth and diversity of African music, dance, film, and visual arts. So you got something you can do for free that weekend in August.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. This city rules.
The city rules. That's why you're here, buddy. Were you born in Toronto?
I'm from Thornhill originally.
Close, but no, close enough.
No,
but,
I know. To locals,
did you go to Thornley?
I did.
Frequent guests Cam Gordon and Stu Stone met at Thornley, and we often talk about some of the graduates. They're older than you, but people like Hayden Desser.
Yep. I see you have a Things Are As Bad As They Seem.
Love Hayden. Hayden and I have become friends because we're soccer dads. Our kids play in the High Park FC, so love Hayden. But also less great, I guess. I never met him. But Gian Gomeshi?
Yeah, we don't advertise.
Is that the name that shall
Thornley.
not be named?
Yeah.
Noah Mintz, of course, from Head.
Yeah.
Who
H Head.
H-Head, which gave birth to Brendan Canning, which brings us back to Broken Social
There we
Scene.
go.
Everything is connected. But yeah, there's a lot of Thornley chatter. And I guess he's not from Thornley, but the guy who played Anakin Skywalker is from nearby, Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, I also believe former Much Music VJ Bill Welichka went to Thornley.
You're correct.
Again, didn't do the research, but that is something I remember being true.
Have you ever heard the name Stu Stone before?
No.
Okay, well, you can't keep this. It's a very rare copy, but he did put out a comedy album with Jamie Kennedy called Blowing Up.
All right.
And Stu Stone was in the basement last week for a 90-minute deep dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of Hulk Hogan.
Ugh.
There's a lot of good, a lot of bad, and a lot of ugly. So
yeah, that's as a wrestling fan, that was. I mean, I was not conflicted, but I was a bit too young for like the heyday of Hulkamania. I was more, watching the NWO days, and I get why people are conflicted, but it's wrestling. Wrestling is a weird world, and he did a lot of not great things for which he never was truly held himself to account. I think that's what a lot of wrestling fans would say is like, you can do bad things. It'd be better if you didn't, but you can do and say bad things. But at some point you have to be able to reflect on your actions, try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, try to, be anybody, come at it from any perspective other than your own. And he always seemed unwilling to do that on a host of, topics from, very insidery, wrestling stuff to just race, in America. So we don't need to devolve further into this.
Well, no, I think that's super fair. Yeah. I will say that in this 90 minutes, we spent 90 minutes on it, and I think we covered it fairly, where we talked about what it was like growing up in the 80s with this figure who was, him and Mr. T was like you had to be there, Eric. I got 10 years on you. It was something else. And then we talked about, what we learned along the way. And we talked about that exact, which is his inability to look inwards and grow as a human being and better himself. And, he mainly brushed off these flaws as, I'm a product of my environment. Let's move on to the next thing. And then next thing you know, he's at the Republican National Convention telling you to vote for Trump. So yeah, good, bad, ugly. That's with Stu Stone, Thornley graduate. Okay, I got a gift for you, one quick one here. I got a measuring tape for you. right there. That measuring tape hopefully comes in handy, Eric. It's courtesy of Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of this community since 1921. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ridley Funeral Home. They have a great podcast called Life's Undertaking. And here's one final tip for you before I get to the questions here. Recyclemyelectronics.ca, Eric, is where you go if you have old electronics, old devices, old cables even. Maybe you got a drawer full of old cables.
I sure do.
Don't throw it in the garbage because those chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, stick in your postal code, and find out where you can drop all of that off to be properly recycled. That's a pro tip for you.
Thank you.
First question goes to a guy who calls himself Hey Ref. I believe he referees hockey games. Hey Ref writes, does he have a relationship with the other Toronto-based athletic writers? It's got to be a bit weird working for a somewhat large organization, but being sort of alone on that island. What would you say about that?
It is bizarre, especially since we moved to, as I mentioned, the sport verticals as opposed to the local-based or verticals. There's just not much opportunity to get together. We usually do it once around Christmas. Maybe if there's another time, we do it then. There was a lot more earlier versus lately, but there were I just naturally was closer to a lot of the people who were there earlier in the days. Like I said, I worked with Sean Fitzgerald, I worked with Caitlin McGrath, I worked with John Lott. Blake was somebody I knew very well from the Raptors beat. And there is less of that now. I've gotten to know some of the people, Lucas Weiss, who's one of the live writers. Scott Wheeler covers junior hockey. I know him a bit. But it's not so, and I should say at the Canadian Press, when I started doing the Agate page as a 19-year-old or 18-year-old, Chris Johnson, who's one of our hockey writers, he was sort of 5 or 6, 7 years older than me and was working a lot of night shifts, so I know him as well. So it's not, the people I know aren't so much from my time at The Athletic, although we do see each other occasionally. It's more so from earlier in our careers. I have been sending Mitch Bannon, who replaced Caitlin as the Jays writer, my harebrained ideas about the Jays, but we have not met yet.
So when you're at a Raptor game at the Scotiabank Arena, can I ask you about some of the Raptors writers we've had in this market for many, many years?
You can ask.
Yeah,
sure.
I hear what you say. Okay. What about Doug Smith from the Toronto Star?
Welcomed me very warmly when I first was in the press box, sort of the person you go to understand how things work. Very thankful for his guidance over the years. Just somebody who obviously has seen it all on the Raptors beat. Almost literally, like he was working for the Canadian Press, I think, in year one, and has been with the Star ever since then. Just a rock, somebody you're going to see virtually every day. It's been very good to me.
What about 90s hip-hop head Ryan Wallstatt?
I played pickup basketball with the man they call Waz and Josh Lewenberg last night. I was
going to ask you about Josh.
We're in a Tuesday run together. Waz is sort of a Jerome Junkyard Dog Williams type if he had a bit more of a jumper. Josh is sort of a combo guard who, fires up threes at a very modern NBA rate, maybe with a less than desirable hit rate, but none of us have a desirable hit rate there. And I've aged into a Steve Novak only takes threes, but again can't hit anywhere near the number that Steve Novak hit. I don't know what happened to my horizontal agility, but I cannot move side to side anymore. I didn't answer your question. Wallstat is a bizarre, endlessly entertaining human being, and he's a good dude, and always fun to joke around with, sometimes make fun of, sometimes he makes fun of me, but a nice light presence on the beat, I would say.
Last time I saw the Waz was at a Cypress Hill show.
Yeah.
If you go to a 90s hip-hop show, you might just bump into the Waz. That's how it works.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's a fair bet.
Okay, one more name I'll throw at you because I personally like this man very much. I'm wondering what interactions you've had with Michael Grange.
At the start of my career, we had a lot of driving to Cleveland together. We made that drive in questionable weather, I think, a few times. And this past year, we actually drove to Detroit, where it was very similar weather. And so I think we've spent a lot of time together on the, in the Midwest, in the American highways of the Midwest. He's somebody, I think, he's an excellent writer. I think he has a good sense of the organization. I think he'll, he's also definitely, as somebody a bit older than me, has been somebody I can lean on for how things work around the beat. And yeah, just somebody I respect for how he does the job. I think he's always able to get what I admire about him is he's able to get a sort of a fair perspective, balanced perspective out there that isn't always easy to do. Sometimes you get caught in positive or negative, like your hot takes of the world, like this is great or this is terrible. And I think he's very good at explaining why things are as they are and where they might go from there.
He's of an age where when Blue Rodeo was just starting out and getting popular, I guess Michael was on the East in the Maritimes going to school. And then he and his buds would go to these Blue Rodeo shows and they called themselves Blueheads. Like this is a conversation I had with Jim Cuddy at Blue Rodeo. Michael Grange goes back to those outskirts days.
Yeah, when we talk about music, he tells me a lot about like can rock of early 90s. And I hopefully give him a few what used to be newer references, but like everybody else, I'm trapped in the music of my early 20s now. So
it's funny how that happens. Yeah,
it just happened to be the best generation of music. I don't know what to say.
There's no better band than Sloan. Come on.
Yeah, he loves Sloan. I love Sloan too. So that's sort of a point of connection there. Yeah, he's probably the person I've spent the most time with and learning like how he, has lived his life, been a dad and balanced the job, which, I think I'm friends with. I have a good relationship with pretty much everybody on the beat, but I think he's the person I've talked the most about that sort of real life stuff with.
Raptors super fan Brian Gerstein wrote in when he heard you were making your Toronto. Do you know this name, Brian Gerstein?
I don't think you're legally allowed to call anybody but Nav Bhatia the super fan. The Raptors
now
super fan.
Now I owe money, I think is how that works.
I do. I remember Brian more so from Twitter.
Right.
Than Blue Sky, but I do. Remember him, yes.
Yeah. Ask Eric, how come I still have no clue how good a coach Darko is? 55 and 109 record is, of course, not indicative of his capabilities due to tanking. This is all Brian's words, by the way. But this year, with the playoffs attainable in a depleted Eastern Conference, how do we measure him? Defense will rule, and he can teach that part of the game well. But is it enough to get us to the top 6 and avoid the play-in tournament?
There was one question in there. There were two questions in there. One was a general question about the Raptors and how they'll do. One was a question about Darko, and then a lot of statements. So I don't know which ones he wants me to answer. How come we don't know Darko is a good coach? Because they changed paths less than halfway through his first season. They shifted into a more developmental path. and then they've had a lot of injuries throughout. So that's the basic reason why you don't know whether he's a good coach. I don't know if he's a good coach. Like, I think he has shown a lot of positives in the way he treats people and the way he works with people and the way that he sort of creates a development first culture. But as you get better as a team, the X's and O's and the ability to manage egos and all that become more important. I think this team's strength is not going to be its half-court offense, and the ability that, whether he can turn this group into a group that can be closer to average in that versus objectively bad is going to determine this team's success and maybe a top 6 spot. And that will also give us more of a clue about how good of a coach Darko Rajakovic is.
All right, this question's from yours truly, Toronto Mike, asking, because I am curious.
I'm glad I got all the big questions from the internet. So many people were interested in me that you had to provide your own filler.
I want to ask a question. It's my show, damn it.
Yeah.
And maybe if you could tell me how you ended up at the National Post. So we know how you end up at the Athletic, where you've been for almost a decade now. But you mentioned you've been at the National Post for like almost a decade or whatever. How did you end up at the National Post?
Yeah, so I started, as I mentioned, at the Canadian Press. They needed somebody to do Agate, which for those of you who don't remember is sort of like the back page of the newspaper with all this of the sports section, with all the standings and the results from last night's game,
Sure.
et cetera, et cetera. And like I would take calls from, this guy from the QMJHL and format the standings. And that's sort of what I was doing for a bit while I was in school. But that was a lot of night shifts and I stopped being able to sleep, and that I found was not good for my brain. So between that and sort of not getting the opportunities, finding it difficult to get opportunities, I stopped doing that. And then in something we will probably never hear again, the National Post was, and I don't mean this for just the National Post, I mean this for any physical newspaper, was expanding its physical sports section. It was making it bigger. At the same time, they had gotten rid of their relationship with the Canadian Press, where I had previously worked. And the Canadian Press, among other things, has a lot of, has a relationship with the Associated Press. You get a lot of things like roundups of that night's action in baseball or hockey. So I was on something I applied and got a job at something we called the rewrite desk, which was basically doing those roundups, seeing what happened in these games and getting that sort of, basic information into the paper in a hopefully readable way. So that's what I was doing for my first stint there. That coincided with my 4th year in school, where I started to do an internship and got more opportunities to write. In short succession, the Raptors job came open twice. Aaron Weary, who I believe now works for CBC writing politics, he left to go write politics. And it was Matthew Sakaris, who's out in BC now, I believe, who got the job then. He was at the Post for a hot minute before going to the Globe and Mail, opening the job again. And that time, I had applied. I had been doing more freelancing for them. They were more comfortable with me and put me on the Raptors beat somewhat insanely at, I think, 22 years old.
Wow.
Like you hear the stories of how, everybody starts off covering high school sports. And like, to be sure, I wrote my share of junior hockey stories, but like my first actual beat is still the only actual beat I've covered, which is the Raptors. And yeah, that's how that happened. And again, not like I didn't work hard. It's not like I don't think I learned a lot of lessons and made myself better, but it's also very much a right time, right place sort of situation.
Now, a couple more on our way out here. I think I said I'd take an hour, and I'm leaking over that, and I hope that won't piss you off. But I promise not to take too much more time, but I'm digging this chat. And I'm curious about your opinion on Rogers owning everything all of a sudden. Like, does this change anything from your perspective as a sports writer, or even from a fan's perspective, that all the major sports, basically outside the Maple Leafs who play at Christie Pitts, they're all, and who knows what's going to happen with that. But, I mean, Rogers owns everything now.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I don't think monopolies or, something close to monopolies are good for businesses. I'm not going to sit here and complain about the way the Jays have managed, or the Rogers has managed the Blue Jays. I have notes. We don't need to get into that, but like, they've spent money on the team, which I think is what fans mostly care about. They've tried to win. The ways that they've gone about that, you can certainly argue with. From a coverage perspective, which I think is more how you're asking the question, maybe, we'll see. Like, certainly having both big cable / digital companies own them created a sort of, equality by necessity situation where, Bell and Rogers had these drafts for games, so they split them up 41-41 on TV and on radio pretty much. I think Rogers is a very buttoned up organization. I think part of the reason Raptors fans, by and large, are unhappy to lose Masai Ujiri is, I have certainly nitpicked his handling of the last 5 years or so. I think there was a basketball case to get a new set of eyes in there, but you never had to question whether he cared. You never had to question how much winning motivated him. And he wore his heart on his sleeve. And that's something that doesn't come across screaming in the way that the Jays executives present themselves. And so I'll be curious about how much they are able to do that for the Leafs and the Raptors and the other organizations as they take control here, how much they'll want that or how much they just want to keep it, we have shareholders, we're going to be buttoned up, we're going to be very professional. There's nothing wrong with those qualities, but I think Masai Ujiri, and obviously winning is the biggest factor there, but he was able to tap into this sort of inferiority complex that Raptors fans had for any number of reasons. I don't say that as a judgment, as just we've been like Raptors fans. I say we, like I grew up as a Raptors fan, so I still slide back into that sometimes, although I certainly hope that people understand I don't cover the team as a fan. I've written enough negative things.
No cheering in the press box. Right?
But, in the market, the Raptors fans felt like a third child, if that, at some times. In the NBA, they're the only Canadian team, and there was Masai Ujiri sort of saying, we don't have to be that. As a city, as, a team, we can aim higher. And what's funny is, I don't think anything he did changed the types of players who came to Toronto willingly. They got Kawhi Leonard, but they couldn't keep him. They kept their own players for the most part. That even ended. They never signed any huge free agents. What he said didn't change the roster building really, and I think it sort of changed the perception of the team in the NBA, but not in this huge dynamic way, and they've obviously fallen back into this sort of mediocrity, so it hasn't changed it for good in any way. But the way he spoke to that and cared about that and aimed for that was really what resonated with Raptors fans. And so losing that, and I think that will be pretty irreplaceable, as I'm guessing, like just as like putting that out there as a goal. I think that's going to be a blow for Raptors fans.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about Masai, but you did it yourself, so I appreciate that. So here on our way out, so we only met each other for the first time like about an hour and 15 minutes ago, and I've enjoyed the conversation very much. I think you're a funny guy. You have a good sense of humor. Here, not that you need my
I am desperate and needy.
Validation. But I have noticed with your sense of humor, I've noticed you do this thing, which I can do at times as well, but self-deprecation. You know what I mean? So,
I'm aware. Yes, I have this. I have this quality about me.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, we don't have, you're not on the couch here, but where does that come from? Like, even the L for left field, like, your go-to joke is that it stands for loser, right? So there is that self-deprecation humor, and there's quite a bit of it, and it is amusing, but I just wonder if that comes from a deeper place, or if that's just funny jokes.
I don't know if it's like a millennial thing. I don't want to... I'm not smart enough.
I'm Gen X. I need to be educated.
Yeah. I've got like, I think a lot of people my age have this imposter syndrome about us. And I don't know, like I've always, like even as an adult, like I just turned 40. It's embarrassing that I still feel this way, but I feel like I am faking it to a certain degree. And like, I know I am good at parts of my job. Like, I know I'm pretty good at, writing a sentence. I'm really good at, I can write an opinion column pretty damn well. But I still, like, hate going into a locker. Hate is strong. I still get, and even not nervous, but, like, one of the qualities I admire most in others, because I don't have it, is just a reporter's ability to slide up to somebody who's sitting in his locker and just start a conversation. Whereas the thing that goes through my head is, oh, this person doesn't want to talk to me. They're probably using their time to prepare or talk to whoever, and they don't want to do this. I just cannot not think that way. And so like maybe I just dwell on my weaknesses and why I do that. I can't untangle for you here, but
we'll need a longer session.
But that's just, in my job and in my life as a whole, that is just the way I feel most comfortable expressing myself. Now, I am aware that somebody can do that too much and that becomes irritating. I'd rather lean that way, and I can only lean that way. But even if I was choosing, I'd rather lean that way than the person who comes across as ultra confident and, so sure of themselves,
right.
and to the point where they're not willing to concede that, somebody else might have a point. I think, not to get too broad here, but people, if more people were willing to acknowledge their own faults and flaws and not be so damn sure of themselves, the world might be slightly better. That doesn't mean we need a world of people questioning every decision they make and, second guessing everything. That would be bad too. I guess I just think that would be preferable to what to the exact opposite of that. But now we're really getting into high-minded stuff, and I think it's basically just the way I am, but that's my best guess at an answer for that.
Now, typically, self-deprecation humor is simply, I'm going to put myself down before you put me down. Like, it's like a preemptive strike.
Could be that. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But you still have to think that somebody is going to put you down.
Sure.
So, like, wherever it comes from, it's like, well, obviously, these are my weaknesses. Everybody could see them. Therefore, I will get
right.
myself.
But this begs the question, Eric, would the New York Times employ a loser?
Hopefully not. I don't know.
I think the answer is no. You're not a loser.
I'll take your word for it. I think I'm doing okay, and certainly feel very fortunate about my career. Occasionally, I feel like I have done well and deserve some of the good things in my life. Occasionally.
Well, continued success. Look forward to your 10th anniversary at the Athletic, and then maybe your 20th and your 30th if you want it. So.
Let's not get crazy, but thank you very much.
And how now? I have a few seconds left before I read my outro. I'm just curious, how was this for you? Like, did you look forward to this? Did you think, oh, I guess I got to get this out of the way? He's been asking me for 7 years or whatever.
No, I was looking forward to it. I was hoping I wouldn't ramble on too much. Another thing I hate about myself is my inability to ask a direct question. So I can ramble. I think I probably did ramble at sometimes and lose the plot.
No.
I'd give myself a C+. On
Will
this
you listen back to
performance.
this?
Probably not. I'll listen to parts of it, but probably not the whole thing. But I was not dreading it, and hopefully one day we can even kick out the jams.
Okay, I would love it.
That. Yeah.
You know the way to my heart. I would love you to come back at some point and kick out the jams with me, and we'll just talk music.
Yeah, maybe next summer that we can put that lightly on the schedule.
I'll put a date in next July 2026. I'll put a date in there. But Eric, it was nice to finally meet you. I've been reading your work for what feels like forever, and you do good work and continued success. And thanks for dropping by today.
Thank you for having me.
And get ready for the tree picture. Everybody takes a tree picture. From Blake Murphy to Michael Grange to the Waz. There's a bunch of tree pictures out there. And that brings us to the end of our 1736th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Subscribe to The Athletic, right? You can read Eric's work in The Athletic, and you should subscribe to keep it going there. Much love to all who made this possible. Again, that's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, Toronto's Waterfront BIA, Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, and Ridley Funeral Home. But I want to say a big thank you to Nick Iones from Building Toronto Skyline. Nick is pausing for a couple of months. We have a brand new sponsor that will be unveiling on Friday who's going to take those 2 months. So new sponsor coming. We'll say goodbye to Nick for a little bit. Hopefully he'll be back. But Nick, we appreciate you stepping up to help fuel the real talk. You helped keep this going. Thanks, buddy. I'm looking forward to working with the good people at Blue Sky Agency and Doug Mills, and we'll talk more about Doug on Friday. See you all tomorrow when Gare Joyce returns. He's going to talk a little Ron versus Don. He's the guy who called up Ron McLean to talk about Don Cherry's cottage on Wolf Island, and then got this whole exit strategy quote, and the rest all will be disclosed with Gare Joyce tomorrow. See you then.